Hey, Luis.
Hi, who's that? Oh, hey, Aaron, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Luis, did you just change jobs recently?
I did. I am now working with JLL.
Oh, okay.
So I actually work with I don't know if you know her, Denise Bullock. She told me that she knows some people at Big Ladder. Um, she went to graduate school with them. So I
Yeah.
don't know exactly who, but she mentioned that earlier today.
Right. Yeah. Denise had overlapped more with my teammate Neil. I think she had
Yeah,
started after I had graduated. But yeah, I've met Denise
yeah.
before in person.
She's amazing. So now I work in a different team, but we are actually working on similar stuff.
Gotcha.
Great to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Aaron, how's
Hello
it
there.
going?
Good. How are you?
We have a lot of camera shy people. Hey, everybody. It's happy hour at my house, just so everybody knows. It's after 5. Actually, it's after 6 now.
Yeah, which means that we started just on time.
Right?
So Elizabeth, I'm gonna make you co-host, and then the same for John.
Oh, I don't know. That's a lot of pressure.
Well, you can share the responsibility. Lots of co-hosts. Yeah, and then I'll keep an eye out for as Jamy and Linda join, make them co-hosts as well. But yeah, but welcome everybody. We're going to start our presentations at 6:30, but for now it's just kind of networking, socializing time before then. So hopefully everybody's at the end of their workday can have a beverage like I'm about to. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, I think Linda said she would join like 6:15.
Right. Okay.
But John, you're with Linda's group, right?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
So-
fantastic.
Yeah, I think we met at either BPAC or an I2SL concert or conference, not concert,
Concert.
a while ago. To me, they're all concerts, but
They're all concerts. Yeah.
I have to go in with that mentality, so I'm really stoked for it. But yeah, I'm with the Linda's group, Ambient Energy, which was acquired by Mead and Hunt back in September.
Yeah, that's exciting. Everything goes smoothly with that transition.
Yeah, more or less. We're now, I think, how many times bigger are we? Like 500 times bigger company?
Yeah, yeah, because Mead and Hunt, they're huge, right? And aren't they everywhere?
They're not huge, but they're like 1,000 people, and yeah, they're all over the US.
I think that's huge in our little world.
Yeah, I've always worked at smaller companies.
I'm happy if we just get to double digits. I'm still in single digits.
Where are y'all located now? Are you in the Denver area? Or are you South Denver or North?
We're local Denver, but everybody works from their home. So
Okay.
it's I'm in Parker and Jordan's in Boulder, and Mohammed, who's actually on the line here with us. He's sort of in Seattle, but I think he's in Saudi Arabia at the moment.
Okay.
Mohammed, where are you right now? You're a jet setter.
Yeah, in Saudi right now for a few weeks with my parents. But originally based in Seattle.
Based in Seattle and then soon to move to Michigan. So we're kind of all over the place at the moment.
Oh, cool. Y'all do mostly work in the Front Range area or in Denver or Colorado or all over?
Yeah, it's Colorado keeps us busy. We've got a few projects elsewhere, but it's mostly with our Colorado clients. So we're pretty entrenched in all this local craziness that's happening.
There's plenty of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gotten kind of intense. Now everybody's getting ready to move to the 21 2021 codes, and so
Yeah.
everybody's freaking out, right? I see Luis nodding.
Mhm.
Luis, who are you with? I don't think we've met before.
I am based in Chicago. I work with JLL. Yeah, I think we haven't had the pleasure before. I haven't had the pleasure before, but I just nodded very heavily at the 2021 comment because I I'm having issues with, our state deciding the exact date. So I have projects that are going for permit very soon, and I'm like, well, we don't know yet if it's changing in July, in August, in September. They cannot tell me any information. So
That's so hard.
it is.
We're in a little bit of the same boat. Colorado is a home rule state, so every jurisdiction adopts their own codes at their own pace. So it's not even like Colorado deciding anything yet, although that's a topic of discussion today. So, Parker is doing one thing and Littleton's doing another thing and Denver's doing something and Boulder's doing something, and they're all doing it at different times. Teams cannot keep track of anything that's going on. I have to know like 6 different codes at any one time. It's a hot mess.
Yeah, we did a project, can't remember if it was Eagle or Pitkin County, and they were on like a 1970s code cycle still. I was like, are you for real?
Wow.
Yeah. They basically didn't have a code.
Wow, that's impressive.
And then most people, I think, are IECC maybe 2015 or 2018 that we've seen.
Yeah, I did one in Brush, Colorado, which is kind of way out east, like out by Fort Morgan, and they were under the 2003 IECC, but I think they've recently seen the light and have just changed. So that's I think that's one of the topics of discussion today is have you guys seen that Colorado bill that's just going through the legislature where there's going to be a state code now and everybody's going to have to upgrade to a minimum. I know all of our rural jurisdictions are going to freak out. Well, who else is on the line? I see Justin and Jordan, I know you, and Scott, and I'm going to butcher your name. Ahodala. Did I say that right? Ahadola. Sorry, I apologize.
All very shy folks, apparently.
You're all too shy. You don't have to turn your cameras on if you don't want.
Poke my head in here briefly. Yeah, Scott Criswell. I'm California guy, or at least that's where I'm working on the California code. So just kind of checking in and seeing what's happening. I develop software for testing compliance to the California both res and non-res code.
Do you do mostly the Title 24 stuff or things outside of that?
CBEC, all the, not res and non-res CBEC stuff.
I feel like we're so behind you guys and just code regulations and stuff. It's a trickle down process.
Yeah, very much so. And, and it's, it's a hot mess everywhere. We're jamming together new versions for that need to be approved in something like 6 weeks, and commission is still trying to figure out what their own standard means. So lots of fun.
Yeah, good times. Let's see. I also see David Holtzclaw. Did I say that name right?
Correct. Yes, I'm your neighbor to the east. I'm from Nebraska.
Oh, that's not too far.
No, actually, I've had some projects out around Denver. So we kind of went through this headache about 3 years ago when the state upgraded to the 2018 IACC.
And you guys have a state code?
We have a state code, although it can be amended locally, and there's a whole lot of that going on. So it kind of varies from HJ to HJ. Surprisingly, they have not touched the commercial IACC for the most part. That has stayed intact. Enforcement is another story, but it's on the books, and we're slowly getting there. Slowly improving. Our residential, there have been a lot of pushbacks from our local home building association. So to both the 2018 IRC and 2018 IACC. So that has been heavily amended from city to city, particularly in rural areas. So all blower door tests have been removed. A lot of the decking requirements have been removed.
Interesting.
Some allowing wall cavities for returns, lowering below grade insulation, or changing some of the wording regarding your vapor versus damp barriers. So yeah, it's been interesting. We'll see how it. So yes, and I was actually heavily involved with the legislation to get that passed. So it took us 3 years, but we finally got it done.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and it may not change again from there in 10 years. We were on a 2006 before, so we were a decade behind.
Wow, that's a
took us about 4 years to change. And yeah, it has been a big jump, and so adoption. That is one of the reasons why adoption has been tricky.
What was the reason for getting rid of the blower door tests? That seems to be like the most important thing.
Because the home builders didn't want it, point blank. We've so it's again, we went from 2006 to 2018, so there was never a blower door requirement test, and there was just a lot of pushback from the homeowner, the national. Actually, the national homeowner association is okay with it, but locally they fought it tooth and nail, and we're able to put enough pressures on city councils to amend it. So it's in the state code, but Omaha has amended out, Lincoln has amended out, Kearney has amended out, so all the major cities has amended out. You do see it's still in there in some of the rural counties because they haven't, like there's no city council to go to amend it. But again, like Colorado, probably we have, several areas where you have one code official doing all inspections for like a 4-county area. I mean, that's just where it is.
Yeah.
So they're not, they wouldn't know how to run or check a blower door if they saw one. So, so we've done some of that, and done some training to some of the local code officials, and, they're doing what they can, but code officials staffing is an issue here and nationally. They're all retiring because they're all about 70 and nobody there to fill in the gap. So.
Yeah, we're having, I would say, similar challenges in all our local jurisdictions. Oh, Matthew, you've got your camera on. Want to say hi?
Oh, yes. Hello, I'm Matt.
Hey, Matt. Where are you out of?
I'm based in Denver. I work at NREL.
Oh, nice. Well, you got all the fun toys then. How are things at NREL?
Going great. Yeah, we're back in person now, so it's enjoyable.
Which group are you with NREL?
Communities and Urban Sciences.
Oh, that's neat.
The split of the commercial buildings group.
Was the whole campus closed for a while, or was it kind of like up to your own discretion to come back?
It was pretty much closed for at least a year, and then starting like last June, there was permission for some staff to come work on site occasionally, and then they phased to sort of back in full starting this month, actually. But a lot of people are still like, they're on a hybrid schedule, so they'll work in the office 2 or 3 days a week and work from home 2 or 3 days a week.
Right.
Oh, that's nice. I'm a big fan of the work from home thing. I like to say I was doing it before it was cool. I don't have an actual office. We all work from home. I think it's the best, but not everyone agrees with me.
Matt, I just want to take the opportunity and thank you for your work in Open Studio Standards. You make my
Yeah.
work, my day-to-day job so much easier. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, you're welcome. We just pushed the next release actually like a day or two ago. So
What are you up to now?
oh, this is Open Studio Standards. So I'm the primary person at Emerald that maintains that code base.
Oh, what version are you up to now?
2.16. It's still actually technically not like a version 1. So there's a lot of like main functions which we sort of keep locked down, but underneath it all, there's still a lot of things that are in flux. So, but we should have like baseline. We have some baseline automation, but we should be finishing up baseline automation for 90.1, 2016, and 2019 by September.
Oh,
which I
wow.
think will be a big help.
We're still primarily, Mohammed's helping us upgrade, but we're still primarily on old school version 2.9. Open Studio, we haven't totally migrated to the newer Open Studio application. I call it version 3, but I think now you guys call it 1 point something.
Yes, the app is now separate from Emerald. So
yeah. Back in my day, when we started in version, I think I started, it was 0.6 or something. Yep. So that was fun. It's neat to see it evolve. Yeah, you guys are doing good work over there. I'll just echo Luis's compliment there.
Yeah, I think a lot of our users are now interacting with it through Revit systems or Ladybug tools. I think are probably the 2 most popular pathways right now. I still like the SketchUp plugin. I haven't used it in a while. Most of our modeling work is just
I do love my SketchUp plugin. I don't know if I could get away from that. I don't know, Aaron, maybe you'll convince me to go a different way, but I sure do like SketchUp.
I don't have much alternatives for you.
What's that?
I don't have many alternatives for you.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy in SketchUp. Oh, Jamie's on the line now. Hey, Jamie. Welcome.
Hey. Oh, where'd you go?
Oh, we're here.
Follow the sound of my voice.
Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I was here. Lost you. Went incognito again.
Yeah.
So who else do we have? It seems like we probably have a lot of non-Denver people, I'm guessing.
It's probably about a 50-50 split, maybe 60-40. There are 12 people on. Yeah, like 7 or 8 are Denverites.
Aaron, when are we going to get back to our in-person meetings, or are we? What's your plan? I figure you're in charge.
Yeah. Well, the next events that we've got in the pipeline are student night. So having UC Boulder, Mines, and then possibly asking like CSU and other universities in building, modeling, or performance space, have their students give a short 3 to 5 minute presentation on their research.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. If that makes sense to do in the summer when they're out of session, I don't know, we'll see with scheduling and whatnot. Otherwise, we could have a kind of a revisit for the Energize Denver event, where we had, I forget who it was, but someone from the city of Denver talking about their getting into 2030 plan for electrifying Denver and building code changes and all that stuff. And then folks from Group 14 that sit on the committees for that. So just kind of see like what's happened over the last year, how's progress going, and stuff like that. If the case rates keep going down like they are now, then I would imagine that our next one in June probably could be in person.
Yeah, it'd be fun to do something outside even.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you have any ideas for good venues that have large outdoor spaces, or maybe do a tour of a cool historical building or something, we'd love to hear it.
We had a fun little adaptive reuse project at oh gosh, I'm gonna forget it. It's called Number 38 in Denver. It's that big it's Rhino. It's this big outdoor event space. I don't know if it would have presentation space. It's a really inefficient building, so don't judge me. We got it to pass the code. It's being heated by its pizza oven. But it's a really nice outdoor space. They open up the garage doors in the summer. It's beautifully ventilated. You can go around. There's multiple different breweries and stuff. And please don't judge the uninsulated brick walls. It's a reuse of an old warehouse. But it's called number 38. It's fun space.
At least we're saving some embodied carbon, right?
Yeah, I know. That's how we try to justify it. But it really was. It's just heated by its pizza oven.
So wintertime, you gotta keep those pizzas cranking.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's, how you justify they did add some insulation, but there's a lot of uninsulated, this beautiful exposed brick walls, which architects love, and those beautiful ancient historic windows that are single pane glass. Thank goodness for the pizza oven.
I do not like the historic preservationist movement.
I know.
You
can't even call this one historic. It's just they love the look of the old brick.
I get buildings pre-industrial revolution, but like if the building was designed and primarily used like coal or like wood, chopping down or clear cutting forests as its heating source, like I don't know if that's something we want to preserve.
I know it. We should make him add a little bit, but yeah.
What is the pizza oven used as fuel? Is it just gas?
What's that?
What is the pizza oven used for fuel? It's just gas?
It's wood fired, actually.
Wood-fired?
Yeah. It's beautiful. Not energy efficient. It's a really nice space to hang out though. I mean, it doesn't even matter that it's not insulated, because in the summer they open up the big garage doors and it's all open. So who needs insulation when you do that, I guess? Good times.
I've been thinking about designing a solar pizza oven.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Just like, a large reflector and concentrate it.
I have my solar slow cooker.
Nice.
Which sometimes I put it in the front yard and I'm waiting for neighbors to be like, your mirror thing blinded me. And I'll be like, let's talk about this contraption that I have out here.
That's when you invite them over for some stew. So I could,
right.
Yeah, whatever's in the slow cooker.
That's good.
Some of those organic lentils.
It's very pioneer woman. I love it.
It's something that definitely works. Just chuck it all in the morning and does its thing. Can't be a cloudy day though.
Well, it's Colorado. 300 days of the year.
Yeah, just as if the clouds come in the afternoon, that's okay. It's already good.
Well, maybe we'll do the next meeting at Linda's house. Do solar stew.
Sweet. I have cooked a stew before for the office on Earth Day.
Oh, that's awesome.
April's good for sunny skies. So
It's tomorrow, right?
it's tomorrow.
Yes. Don't say that too loud though, or you'll make it snow. It could happen.
Well, that would be good since it's gonna
I
be
know.
like all crazy wind. Yeah. So we're assembled on Earth Day Eve.
Mhm.
I totally missed that. That was not on my radar. I'm a bad person.
What?
You're right. It is Earth Day Eve.
It is Earth Day Eve. Yeah, I put on my green t-shirt with my Colorado
Oh, look at
climate.
you.
You're disappearing
Climate
in your green
march.
screen.
Yeah, that's true. I did, didn't I? My invisible shirt.
Your head just rises.
You're just a head and a Colorado logo.
Yeah, it's the People's Climate March from 2017.
Very cool.
So is everybody somewhere in Colorado, or do we have people who are further afield?
Sounded like a mix.
Yeah, it's
Aaron, you say it's
probably
about half.
Yeah, it's probably a little more Colorado folks now, like 60, 40, 70, 30, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys do an hello, my name is round of introductions?
No, we've been chit-chatting informally
Yes.
and making people turn the cameras on, put them on the
the
spot.
name on the screen, doing that for you.
Yeah, we've had a few folks who have stayed on mute.
That would be good though. Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't put Jordan on the spot yet. She's from our office, so I might make her say hello.
Hey everyone.
I won't make you turn
Hello,
the camera on
Jordan.
if you don't want.
Unmute everyone and turn their cameras on somehow. You could do that, can't you? You work for the government.
We have the technology.
That's what I would imagine.
What time do we officially start? Are we starting at 6:30?
Yeah, that's when we're scheduled. So
Give or
just
take.
a couple minutes. Yeah, but I mean, got a little lull in conversation. We could get started now if you want.
Well, who haven't we put on the spot yet?
I can speak. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Justin?
Yep.
All right. I tried earlier on, first time running Zoom on this computer, so speaker settings. But yeah, thanks for putting this on. Glad to be here. I just moved to Denver, relatively new to the industry, or Boulder to be specific. And my region of focus is back where I'm from in DC, Eastern Seaboard, to low mid-rise, all residential type work. And real curious about hearing this diverse mix.
Well, welcome to Colorado.
Yeah.
How did you find the IBPSA group?
So I was a student member back in school, did a little building science oriented research. And yeah, I've always been fascinated in trying to grow my chops in more commercial energy design. You know, being currently more single family residential focused. So yeah, just trying to keep those cogs turning there.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, residential's a hot market, that's for sure.
Yeah, seen a lot of 2/2s and towns growing in the DC metro area. But yeah, that low and mid-rise, couple of projects here and there.
Yeah, well, even low and mid-rise, and Boulder and Denver have integrated those into their commercial codes. So there's no escape from all this code madness.
Yeah,
They came to the right
I've
place.
dipped my toes in eQuest a little bit. But yeah, really learning the ropes there.
Oh, fabulous.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining, Justin, and thanks to everybody else for joining as well. I think we can get started, 6:30. Welcome everybody to our April Sim Club events, where we've got 3 different practitioners from the Colorado, Denver Front Range area to speak about energy codes. It's kind of where they're going and what's working and what's not. We have Linda Morrison from Ambient Energy, Elizabeth Gillmor from Energetics Consulting, and Jamy Bacchus from ME Engineers. This is going to be a bit more of a casual kind of event than what we've done in the past. A lot of times we do longer presentations with a question and answer session. This is more of a roundtable discussion, kind of engaging you all, trying to get more discussion between everybody that's attending. So I'm going to pass it off to Linda. I think you had slides that you have prepared. You want to share your screen for those?
I will do that now.
Okay. Unless you had other stuff you wanted to introduce yourselves before we got going or anything like that.
I think we're good. Let's see here. Zoom slideshow. Am I sharing the right view?
We're looking at your
not in presentation mode, but it is your
that works.
There we go.
PowerPoint.
All right,
There
so
you
here
go.
we go. So thanks, Aaron, for that, and thanks for having the 3 of us over. And we definitely want to have a discussion because the 3 of us have been talking on a fairly regular basis the 3 of us are part of a much larger group that is on the Denver Code Committee, and they're actively reviewing what amendments to adopt. We'll talk more about that. But yes, we definitely want you all to contribute and so we share our knowledge and have an interesting conversation together. And we had a couple ideas in mind on some things that that are potentially, important aspects of this discussion. I'm going to take us through a little bit of Codes 101, and that finishes up our formal remarks of any kind, and then we'll just have a conversation. So on these topics, if you wouldn't mind giving them a skim and thinking about like what you came to learn about or ask questions about or advocate for. And, we really want to get what's on your mind as well. And we're happy to discuss these and anything else that comes up. So I thought I'd start with, the call to the, it's Earth Day, right? We're doing this for a reason to be a greener, less carbon intensive built environment. The built environment is 40% of national emissions. Colorado, it's ranked the number 4 producer of emissions. And our grid has been one of the dirtiest in the country because of the coal. And then we've got Xcel Energy committing to 80% renewables by 2030. So that's good. But I think we'll probably come back and talk some more about how much we can count on that, how that plays into renewables that might go onto our projects. Just, is it going to be successful? So I have up here on the screen, so IECC, that ASHRAE standard 90.1, Title 24, and the image from the Colorado Boulder Energy Code for 2020. And so question for you all, which of these is not like the others? Which is not a code?
Anybody use the Zoom features to raise your hands? I'm gonna.
Is everybody muted? Can you unmute our gang?
What is Quebec?
That's the Boulder energy code.
Since that has code in the title, I'm guessing it's not that.
I guess we would say ASHRAE because it's a standard, not a code, as a standalone, right?
Yeah,
Do I have that right?
you get a gold star there, Elizabeth.
Woo!
Yeah, because that standard is not something that a jurisdiction will adopt, but it is referenced by IECC. So a jurisdiction would adopt a code like IECC and then can modify it to their whims. So then, Jamie, I know you gave me a different slide. I happen to like this one because it did actually mention Title 24. So it colors California with Title 24, and then we've got Washington State, because it has its own energy code. And then you can see that we've got this variety from 90.1 2007 as and its cousin, the IECC 2009, through to current. But this isn't really true of what's happening in Colorado. As you probably know, Colorado's home rule. So there are 300 or more jurisdictions on the Colorado Energy Office website. They list that basically a third of those jurisdictions, so that might be a county or a city, haven't adopted an energy code. So that's interesting. They say that 48% of the population lives in a place in Colorado which has adopted at least IECC 2018. I guess that means the majority of Coloradans live in a place that has not. And Colorado is working to update the minimum energy requirements for all jurisdictions. So we can get into that a little bit more. And this came from some of the Denver conversations on where electrification is happening as a code. So California is big, and then we've got different individual jurisdictions in some states that are adopting it. I was kind of curious whether, just kind of a shout out on who thinks this is a great idea for electrification. Pleasure of the group. You love it. You can't wait for electrification to happen.
What's a great idea? Electrification or using codes to push electrification?
The code part of electrification. So the code that would have remove combustion from buildings and facilities.
Well, I guess that's the big overreaching question, right? Like what, whose grid looks like what?
Yeah, I think it's great, but having sit on a couple ASHRAE standards that are trying to do that, we're getting a lot of pushbacks from different municipalities that are on grids where that just isn't possible. So you're going to run into some legal hurdles.
So some technical and legal issues.
And probably cost as well.
Maybe some cost.
Of putting electrification for everybody.
Anybody who wants to advocate for keeping fossil fuels, like keeping your gas hookup?
Probably not on this call, but there are quite a few people out there doing that right now. So yes, there are a lot of people pushing for that.
Yeah,
there's a couple people in our industry.
And there are people who believe that maybe the natural gas would have a renewable component to it of some kind.
Oh, yes. Renewable natural gas.
Yeah.
Not sure if we're going there tonight.
Yeah, not sure about that.
But it's out there with clean coal. We'll put it out there.
All right, so coming back around to codes, just wanted to pull the code compliance. Here's where the rubber meets the road. So on the IECC 2021, the left side of the page, we've got prescriptive compliance or a performance with energy modeling path. So A is prescriptive, B is the building performance modeling path, or C, move over to ASHRAE 90.1. So going over to the right side of the column, we've got another prescriptive path, meeting all the mandatory requirements, or a modeled approach with energy cost budget, or the performance rating method, or Appendix G. I was going to do a show of hands of who's done each of these. We want to spend a moment doing that. Who's been involved with an IECC prescriptive? Do you want to just shout it out? Because I can't see your hands.
Well, under 2021, we're just kind of embarking on that. We haven't gone all the way through it yet.
How about on a code that's been around for a little while? So prescriptive compliance. Yeah, so you've done some of those, Elizabeth. The rest of the group, how much do you guys get into actually showing compliance? Anybody with prescriptive?
I don't know if you're checking the participants or attendee list. Few people have raised their hands. David, John, Luis, Jordan.
Great. And let's clear hands and see who's been involved with IECC, a recent version for total building performance.
I'd say we do that on every project, almost, unless for some reason they can't get there.
Yeah. And then who's the four that raised hands?
Pretty much the same group as last time, except now we've got David, John, Justin, and Jordan.
Okay. How about on the 90.1 side, the prescriptive part of 90.1?
Gosh, I'd say only for lead projects. And Boulder.
All right, let's put hands down. Energy cost budget.
Not in ages.
Are there any hands up? No. And then performance rating method as a code compliance path. Luis, what did you raise your hand for? Energy cost budget or performance rating method?
For performance rating method.
Oh, right on. And someone else too.
Yeah, I don't have the hand raise capability, but we have done some normative Appendix G for like Fort Collins and and of course Boulder.
Yeah. Okay, well that's for this group. Like I figured there'd be some who had ventured there, but that's interesting. So it sounds like 90.1 mandatory, the prescriptive is least popular out of these, and maybe energy cost budget too. Okay, and so some of the jurisdictions are changing how we're going to do each of these things, and maybe eliminating them. And here's that 90.1 2016 performance rating method. Just we've got this alphabet soup up here, which sets a performance cost index target using a building performance factor, looking at your unregulated energy cost and your regulated energy cost over a baseline building performance. And then you need to beat your performance cost index target. So a lot of letters there. I'm just going to say that I love it when energy modeling builds credibility and builds a common language. And so I'm going to put out that I don't love this. I think this makes it a little bit more of smoke and mirrors than just a basic conversation tying building performance to an EUI.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, Linda, because I thought I was the only one. I also do not love it. It's very difficult to communicate or even set a target before you've started the modeling process. So, where we used to say, we're going to be X, we got to save X%. Oh, done. Everybody can understand that. It's easy to explain. This is it, as you say, I think alphabet soup is a really good description.
So out of this,
Louis
is there?
likes it. Or Luis likes it. I didn't get to read the full comment, but
Oh,
it's
there was a
less
comment.
black. Somebody liked it. I will say it's less black boxy than CVECCOM, the engine that you use for Title 24 compliance, where you're building your model, putting it in, and then it's spitting out your compliance and TDV. And you often like, oh, I'm going to change to a heat pump water heater, and I expect this to go down, and it doesn't always feel intuitive and connected. And that's even less easy to explain than the PCI to a client.
Yeah, I think Luisa's comment has validity in that you have this, you set this baseline, and then all we do is kind of pinch it down for every year. So I know the goal was to have a baseline that stays the same, and then our target just gets slightly more aggressive every time the code cycle progresses. And I appreciate that, and I agree with that. And as energy modelers, we should enjoy that. But when we have to then be also energy consultants and explain that to our teams, maybe it's just because it's all still, at least for us in Colorado, it's still relatively new. It's mostly our Boulder clients who are trying to now absorb this new methodology. Explaining that and communicating it, it's still very new. We've only been doing that, at least here, for I guess a couple of years now. So I don't know, maybe it's too early for me to be grouchy about it.
It's been around for 5 years, so it's not
right, but we just haven't had to use it, right?
Yeah.
We haven't used it, so we don't really, for us, for at least for our industry, for our local community, it's still new for us, even if it's been around.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the go-to because there's other options.
Mm-hmm.
Should we put Big Ladder or Energy Plus on the spot? Like, when are we going to get a baseline generator that
Wasn't that
doesn't
what
require us to do
We have
anything?
it.
It's just like, oh, do you?
Have opens to the standards.
Does it generate the Appendix G baseline?
Yeah.
Oh,
Matthew's
tweaking,
here.
right? It gives a start, and then it still keep brain and gear to finish it out.
Yeah.
Yes, there are two different pathways. So there's what's currently existing, and then the PNL has like a full Appendix G implementation that's on a separate branch, and they're going to be releasing that formally within a few months.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I think I'll probably like it better when that's fully automated and it's running itself, but it still probably feels a little bit like black boxy. But
So we got down a little bit on the.
in theory, I like
let's
the
make
idea of the stable baseline.
We got a little bit on the baseline part of that. So I went back to this slide saying, so is there a path that's not here that might be better for our industry, is my question for you all. And I'm avoiding Title 24 just because I ran out of room on this slide. But if you love Title 24, you could say that.
I mean, it follows the same sort of dichotomy of performance versus prescriptive paths. So you're just using TDV or time dependent source or evaluation.
Yeah, but I guess there's the EUI target path, right? We have a little bit of that with Boulder, and we're starting to dip our toes into that with Energize Denver. Try to keep Jamy under control here. I know Jamy has some opinions on Energize Denver, but that's there's the no baseline pathway that's starting to crop up in various places, right?
Yeah, so I would call that outcome based.
Outcome based, yeah. But in a
so you-
modeling, I guess there's two outcome based codes. There's the modeled target, and then there's the measured target, right? And I
Yeah.
think those are two pretty darn different things.
I happen to like the EUI based. I just think that that's a number that's going to show up in the building operations. So it's something that any building operator will be able to come back to instead of, we did a model, it got turned in with a permit and we've never looked at it again. It just wasn't helpful or useful. It didn't show us anything. So, I think those are good. But is there anyone else in the group have another idea on how to, on codes and how to?
Matt, you just put a comment in the chat about Title 24. You want to expand on, and it sounds like, I know you've got some expertise in that area. Do you mind sharing your knowledge?
I just think EUI is becoming increasingly obsolete. Building energy and efficiency codes were set initially in the 70s because it was cheaper to do efficiency than to build out new capacity. And the cost drops of renewables are sort of flipping that on its head. And so now it matters much more the time of use. So I think TDV is like categorically different and tries to capture those costs versus EUI. I think EUI is like, it's an instrumental goal and it's increasingly becoming like just not good as an instrumental goal, especially if you just throw solar on your building.
So are you saying that you'd get more of the carbon outcome by looking at TDV?
Yeah, you get carbon and costs, especially. I think there's this, all electric is one thing. I think there is this like open debate about how much, should we invest in building efficiency versus trade-offs on the grid. And I think something like TDV really captures that well, where you can prioritize where you're investing your money and then have targets that like get lowest costs between providing it on the grid versus providing it at the building. I think this is why like 90.1 is just completely obsolete, frankly, in my opinion.
Ooh, I've only annotate. So we'll just kind of like draw a big X for this.
Yeah, it has some useful efficiency pieces, but like PNL just released a report like looking at even the gap just to get to net zero and showing that you can't really do it with prescriptive pathways in 90.1. And it's not even what we're trying to go to. Like we're trying to go zero emissions, not zero energy. And those are quite different. And that's why all these cities are doing like building performance standards or like trying to go somewhere else, because 90.1 is like no longer a very good instrumental goal to achieve their aspirational goals.
Thank you. I think that was really well said.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm going to move us through just a few more slides. If I can get my slide to advance. By drawing my X, I made it stop working. There we go. Aspirations of Denver. Denver's trying to get to zero carbon emissions in 2027 when the dot hits the line down here. This is Denver Green Code over here, and then they're looking at where the Denver Energy Code based on IECC 2021 with amendments where they'd like to be for their potential. And this other dot is the current status, so not quite there. Here are the amendments that help get from IECC 2021 down to this performance. And here's a little bit about the code cycle for Denver. So by the time we're at 2030, existing buildings have electrification, and they're looking at an EUI target under Energized Denver performance requirements. And we become more and more required to be electrified in Denver's hierarchy. I'm just going to throw this up real fast about the Energized Denver ordinance that it's beginning to apply to buildings over 25,000 square feet.
Let me get Jamie a drink.
Yeah. That EUI.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, driving Jamie to drink. Yep. Mhm. And so our new construction ends up in this lane by the time it's done. And this last thing that I wanted to pull up is a little bit about the Denver code adoption process. So we've been in meetings hosted by the city with different stakeholders since January. And the intention was that we would get through all their potential amendments, maybe modify them, but pass some, not pass others, and get something that city council could adopt. I think the timeframe was July, but they've put a pause on that and are regrouping to have a potentially better and different process to get to a better and different outcome. We weren't making a lot of progress, which we can talk more about, but wanted to pull this up because it's some of what's currently happening in Denver. There is a chance to be involved with this, which is great because our industry's contributions to the plan, I think, make it better, make it more realistic. Let's see, I think that's all of my, that was all of my slides here. So I'm going to take us back here so we can go down a different rabbit hole, or I'll turn this off and we can just have another conversation.
Sounds like an open invitation. Anybody else want to jump into a topic that maybe wasn't covered or take a deeper dive into something that we touched on there?
Maybe we could, I'm trying to figure out how to how to touch on the status of where Denver is in their code adoption process. You alluded this to a little bit to this in your slide where you noted that things were on hold. And I think that's partly because, well, how do I say this diplomatically? It was, what's a nice way to say it? It was a hot mess.
It got a slow start due to the pandemic, I think.
Exactly.
Is the nice way to say it.
I like
good
that.
scapegoat.
Let's go with that.
So was it a hot mess because it was poorly run? Was it a hot mess because of pushback from the citizens and building owners? Was it why was it a hot mess?
Not the latter.
Yeah, not the latter at all. I would say,
was it the 70 cents per KBTU over figure?
Well, that's Energized Denver, and that's a different hot mess. We're just talking about the Denver codes and green codes update process.
yeah,
Hold that thought.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely hold that thought. So the Denver code adoption process right now is on hold. Partly, I don't even know. I don't even know if I could put my finger on why it became the way it is. Everyone's hearts are in the right place. Intentions are so good. But I think that people who had no business writing codes were trying to write code and trying to apply these broad reaching requirements without really knowledge of how it was going to impact real life, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm sure I'm not the only one who threw a fit. But I did. Yeah, Jamie, I think there was multiple people who were like, what is happening? What are we doing? And it's worrisome for, at least for me, because I'm really locally entrenched, right? 95% of our work is in Colorado. We have, we do tons of stuff with the Excel EDA program where it's just, people just want to meet the code. How do we do that? We have a lot of, diversity in projects. And a lot of those are what I would classify as the non-fabulous projects where people are just trying to meet code. So we do a ton of just code compliance. and trying to find something that met both Denver requirements and also still fit with, I don't know, the reality of the Denver industry. I didn't love how the proposed amendments were, I guess how they were proposed, honestly. And I didn't think a lot of that was fully thought out. I was also a part of the Denver code adoption process in the previous code, which is the 2019 Denver Building Code. And that whole process was completely different. It was much more collaborative. We had multiple, and Jamy, you were part of this too. There was multiple meetings where we just talked through things like, all right, here's Denver's goals. Do we think we can achieve them? What's a good way to meet them? And it was just very collaborative. And then suddenly we get put into these code meetings where it's very formal. It's very Robert's rules. You got to raise your hand to talk, and we're going to talk through it for 5 minutes. And then we've got to vote on these things that are going to impact my livelihood. And it was upsetting that things were not as well thought out in this process as they were in the previous process. And I think you're right, Linda, that this was partly pandemic induced because we didn't have that same opportunity to get together and talk through these things like the collaborative team that we can be. And we lost that a little bit with some of this virtual environment. And
yeah, just to like make it a bit specific, Denver's trying to just give a rule or a definition to what an all-electric building is. Just that's it. We're not enforcing it. We're writing a rule. Well, so that's a definition, which is actually a little bit complex. I think we got through that one. There was ideas about a mandatory minimum amount of PV that were oddly written, that would have required more PV on, a building of greater than 2 stories than likely would be possible to have, just as you get higher and skinnier and taller. And then the code amendments that were written, there's one that really takes out all of those different options except the performance rating method. So eliminates, you could be prescriptive through Denver, or you could be on the performance rating method with additional complexity. So the whole thing about, what's the performance path that's missing, and we talked about an EUI or carbon is even being better, that wasn't part of it. So it was a miss in getting to their ultimate goals, I think.
Yeah, to pull it back a little bit for the people who aren't familiar with Denver or the process, and some of the questions that were asked, we probably lost a lot of time because some of us sat in codes meetings with the city and Noresco last May and June. And we thought, okay, they're going to take these ideas and we're going to have a meeting in July and August that hashes those out, but nothing really happened between those early kickoff meetings last year, almost 11 months ago, till January, February of this year. And then we get this kind of dump of proposals, some of which are well written and some are not. And you end up spending a lot of your time in the committee on a 3-hour live Zoom call of like, well, what is this? And why aren't we hearing the one that's related to that same exact section with it or in the same session, so it can at least weigh whether or not we should spend all this time looking at this C404 or 403 section and trying to break through what Elizabeth was saying, like the structure of the meeting of like, hey, can somebody call me? Because I know one of my friends wrote another proposal that directly affects us. Why aren't we listening to them both at the same time? why are we spending all this time wordsmithing this one proposal? And so it ended up being a bit of a hot mess. And so the city shut all of it down. It's still going to happen. We just don't know. The three of us don't know when it's going to happen. So all these proposals on on-site renewables and the requirements for that is still out there. That proposal still lives. It hasn't died yet. We just have tabled it, and we don't know when the committee is going to come back and vote on it. So people that do have opinions on these things should stay engaged and stay tuned to the CASR and CPD websites to see when these things are coming back. But right now, the committee that we're part of is kind of on hold.
And I guess our point here is not to bellyache about a process, but to say that it is really important that the process hears from practitioners and people with the industry, so that it's as good as it can possibly be.
I mean, it kind of sounds like even if you have more practitioners, more people coming to the table, if the city came to the first meeting with all these things kind of already in motion, or they had their certain notion of how they wanted things to be handled, or the new proposals to put forth, and that just makes it harder to kind of, collaborate and work together when they've got something kind of already set in their minds for how to start.
Yeah, Aaron. So the three of us are the few modelers out of the 25 to 32 that are committee voting members. In which case, if NBI has, or SWEEP has a proposal that says, hey, we're going to change the modeling protocols and the building performance factors used in the PCI methodology, we're the only ones that have familiarity with that. And then the rest of the committee can be like, that sounds like a good idea. We're just going to vote on it. So we're the minority, and we can't shut that down. And so it is incumbent then on IBPSA members or ASHRAE members to call in and say, yeah, that doesn't sound right. I'm not sure that that will work for my clients or my projects.
Luckily, we're kind of loud and obnoxious, so.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, I am. Well, and present company as well. Yeah, we're no shrinking violets, I suppose.
Right on. How about Jamy, can I ask you to tell us a little bit about the Colorado Model Energy Code and what it is
Sure.
and its status?
Sure. So Representative Burnett, along with Howard Geller at SWEEP and the Colorado Energy Office, have put together a bill that is now introduced. It's now in committee. Before a few weeks ago, it was just this draft that hadn't even been introduced yet and hadn't been assigned a number. It's now House Bill 22-1362. Everyone can go online, look it up, and see the current language in that bill. Initially, back in late January, when it was first introduced, it had a carbon metric and had an on-site solar component that you're allowed to burn. I should go backwards. It takes Colorado from a home rule state into a state that would have an energy code, and apparently it's a little bit beyond me, but our Colorado statutes allow CDPHE to regulate energy in a way that we can't just put a building code throughout the entire state. We can do energy. And so they found this way of saying, okay, we're going to have now a bill that requires the 2021 IECC by 2025 in all of the state. And as Linda was saying earlier, a good portion of the state is already doing that. There's just some counties out there that don't really have much construction going on, that have no code or a really, really antiquated IECC code. So the first few versions of the bill had these kind of interesting, I'll say, aspects that required that you could build and on-site combustion. You could put a furnace in, a gas-fired water heater, but you had to offset that with solar. That got struck down apparently by other people, and the current version that's been introduced is really fairly benign. I think it's kind of innocuous. It really just says everyone has to adopt 2021 by 2025 IECC or more stringent. And then it also has provisions in it that you have to put in solar readiness. I think what is it? Appendix CA. And then also some type of renewable or some type of EV requirement. I think it's like 20% for multifamily of over a certain size. So that's the version that's in there now. And so we could all be under the same umbrella statewide energy code if it passes. And then there's also a separate bill, I think it's HB 22-1218, that would require 50% EV readiness in commercial and multifamily. And I assume if that one passes, it would just influence the other, that then the code would have to have that in it. So a lot of legislative action.
Yeah, and that's still a big jump for a lot of rural areas. So that's even yeah, we were talking about who was that when we were chit-chatting earlier, who was talking about the project with the 1972 codes. John, was that John?
Yeah.
The 1972 energy code. So that's still a big push for a lot of jurisdictions for sure. It's a good start, I feel like. You go too far and it's just becomes too far. Baby steps.
Yeah, incremental seems a whole lot more, I don't know, just rational for the people who are designing and building in any community, just to go from one to another versus 10 years of code changes. I look back at my stats and it was currently in Colorado, out of 337 jurisdictions, 84 jurisdictions, so that could be a city or a county, don't have an energy code, period. Which is kind of frightening.
Yeah.
Nebraska's ahead of us now.
Nebraska, how's that? Nebraska's ahead of us, how?
Who's our Nebraska friend? Was that David? I think it was David. He was telling us Nebraska just adopted the 2018 codes, right? And then the local jurisdictions can allow for exceptions, but they did establish like a state code. So, we're now behind Nebraska. That's just unacceptable.
That is completely unacceptable. Yeah, that's embarrassing.
So yeah, we've got some work to do.
So I understand the argument for incrementalism, but I do want to point out that if we want to get the state largely off of gas and try to hit our net zero targets, like there's only so many buildings you can retrofit per year and so many buildings being built every year. If we aren't doing all electric like now, then we're saying that we expect that the significant majority of buildings in a stock are going to still be using gas, and we aren't serious about our net zero emission goals.
Quite right. Yep. Well said. So I guess code, right? It's supposed to to be code compliant is a step away from being illegal. So, right, it brings up people who are right on that threshold. So at least gives them a base. And yeah, if you're going from no code to hopefully IECC 2021, at least you've made a whole lot of impact there. And then the beyond. Did anybody have an example of a jurisdiction that they really like the way that the code is taking out the the electrification and the carbon, Matt, are you thinking that's the California model with TDV for carbon and cost and mandatory allocation for renewables?
Yeah, TDB is, I mean, I think it's sort of the leading thing of how you do code in the States. I think it's probably at least a decade ahead of pretty much everywhere else. I think it's going to be more important to just do what a lot of cities have done, which is just ban gas connections in new buildings. And I know that's somewhat controversial, but if you're serious about it, like frankly, the building stock is just, it's too conservative, or the industry itself is too conservative and too slow moving, that we aren't really going to get much decarbonization or much help in this sort of energy transition from buildings, in my opinion. I think we're going too slow, too late. So pretty much everything's going to come from the electric grid, and we're just going to have to hold our hopes that the electric grid decarbonizes. So prioritizing electrification over, just efficiency, I think is, I mean, efficiency is still very important, and I would push for that, but it's not going to be a significant contribution to the energy transition beyond electrification.
Are any of y'all familiar with the New York State IBPSA? They have a really good dashboard that I
With
like.
the New York State,
NYSERDA, yeah.
the Energy
Yeah.
Conservation Construction Code, or
It's
NYSERDA?
the Energy
I
Research
missed
and
that.
Development
NYSERDA.
Authorities.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
NYSERDA. So they have really great dashboards that I like. I haven't really done any projects up there, so I'm not familiar with the different processes that are going with the code, but they're tracking the information pretty well and showing, carbon reduction, which I like.
Hey, John, do you want to pull one up and share a screen? I think you have screen share abilities.
Yeah, let me.
Yeah.
Screen. So this is, their homepage, and then they have these dashboards, clean energy dashboard down here. And it takes you to, just loads of data, and it kind of breaks it out by quarter for the last, I think you can filter it by different years and different things. So I like being able to see the results of what, different codes are enforcing, or if you're, offering rebates for heat pumps or whatever, and you can track the data and see that it is doing something. I think that it's helpful for, convincing people to follow it as much as, the rebates themselves, or, just coming out and saying you have to do this.
How does their progress go down in a quarter? The most recent one.
I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. But that's, yeah,
What
it's very transparent.
I wonder if could that be pandemic related in the third quarter of 2021?
Like supply chain.
I wonder, yeah.
What is the dark blue or the bluish that's on the bottom? That's the bulk of it.
This one?
Yeah.
So let's see if you can.
Those different utility providers, or?
That's what it looks like to me. I'm not familiar with the utilities up there, but it looks like.
I I used to live there, but I would think it's Con Ed, but it doesn't look like that matches the color. So that's what I'm trying to figure out who that is. That's the largest chunk.
It says IBPSA, so. But yeah.
Just list NYSERDA. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then you can filter by end use. We'll see if, well, I don't know if you can see the different colors there, but it's just data that they have kind of a fairly straightforward way to kind of filter through it.
But that would be something fabulous for, I don't know, Colorado Energy Office to pulled together?
Well, we have Denver's greenhouse gas inventory and the state's greenhouse gas inventory, which you can find an online viewer from CDPHE's website that shows how they break it down. It's weird to me, and in some ways I prefer the Excel file, because then you can sort it, because it commingles too many end uses that the people on this phone call would want to see as singular items. So yeah, don't put industrial with multifamily and commercial. So but if you go into the tabs, you can find that, but on their online portal, it's kind of a mess.
And the savings that are being shown here, these are driven by like incentive and rebate programs, not so much code changes, right?
Yeah, exactly. They primarily do, I think, rebates.
So maybe we'll go to a different topic here. I'm going to share back up the topic roulette here.
We had Mike Rosenberg on for a little bit and then just disappeared. Mike would have been a great person to talk to about this. He's the lead at P&O on all the codes program.
Well, we'll keep an eye out in case he decides to join again.
Yeah, if someone spots him, that'd be great. And thanks for chatting over to him. Elizabeth, would you want to talk a little bit about Boulder's energy targets and what you've seen and how they're good or how they're can be improved?
Sure. So we've, Boulder adopted their 2020 energy code, the CBAC as we affectionately call it. So we have two options under the Boulder code. We either have the PCI methodology following 90.1 2016, basically with some modified building performance factors, or for a handful of buildings, we can use that fixed EUI target. So it's been so interesting getting to know the PCI methodology, because I really haven't had opportunity to use it until we started getting into Boulder projects. And it is really challenging to try to use the PCI methodology with our utility rates here and to promote electrification. So for this handful of projects, or I should say handful of building types that can use that fixed EUI target, electrification is going to win every time. And if I'm doing a multifamily or an office building that fits one of the EUI target categories, then I have a lot of success promoting electrification. But if we have to use PCI methodology, boy, gas wins every time. It's such a bummer. We've had a handful of projects where we've actually had to go to the city and say, your code is working against you guys. Can you give us some flexibility? Luckily, they do. So I'll give you a couple of examples. And this is really funny, but we had a McDonald's, the McDonald's in Boulder. If you know Boulder, it's the one on Baseline. It's a crappy building. They're gonna scrape it and completely rebuild it. So it's got really high cooking loads. So there's no way there's no fixed EUI target. So it's got to follow PCI methodology. The owner for the project really wanted to do all electric cooking. They wanted to do electric fryers, electric cooktops. And they're trying to do the right thing, but the gas costs are so much lower that they could not hit their targets, and they could not physically fit the required solar on site with the electric food service equipment. So I had to talk to Boulder and say, all right, guys, can you let me model the gas food service equipment, but then let them install the electric because of the way that things worked out. with how the PCI methodology was approaching things. And we looked at this every way that I could think of. And, I should touch base with you guys and see if there's a better way that I could have done this. But it was so disappointing to see that the gas food service equipment made the building look better than the electric food service equipment. So the compromise with Boulder was like, all right, let's size our solar as if we're doing gas for our process loads, but let's all look the other way and let them install their electric fryers because that's doing the right thing. And everybody agreed. So it's fine. But the way that the code is written is a major problem in this quest for electrification. I have the same problem with a multifamily project in Boulder. So multifamily is permitted to use that fixed EUI target. And for Jordan and Mohammed in our office, this is that Alexan Boulder project. This is a big Boulder project. The problem is they want to have a pool. They want to have an outdoor pool. I don't have great options for pool heating that are electric. We just don't. It's a big pool. it's going to be gas until I can find really good heat pump boilers. So this is such a shame. And we're in the midst of this right now with Boulder. But I had this whole project set to go all electric. It was going to be beautiful. It was going to be 100% electric, except for the pool. We're going to do that EUI target. Everything was going to be, sunshine and rainbows. Until Boulder said, oh, no, you need to include the pool. And then our solar requirement went through the roof. And unfortunately, now the project looks better from a solar requirement if it goes to gas heating and gas hot water. That just sucks. So, the codes that are written are, when we start to execute them and apply them to real life projects, are working against us in reality. And this is what's so worrisome for Denver is if they go the same direction that Boulder has been, or that Boulder has gone with either this fixed EUI target that doesn't necessarily make sense for every type of building, or PCI methodology, which uses gas baseline. The codes are working against us to try to do electrification. So now for both of these projects to actually make electrification happen, we basically have to modify the code or ask for some exceptions to make it work to keep these projects electric. So, that to me is a code that doesn't work. It doesn't work for the goals. It doesn't work for the community. Yeah, it's this lovely standard and, it's written and you don't have to do much with it, but it doesn't align with the goals that we have been targeted with helping our jurisdictions achieve. And that's a bummer. That's a bummer.
Do you think it's because cost was used or a fixed EUI and not emissions would, instead of just, getting to the outcome, having all these proxies for the outcome instead of the actual?
Potentially, yeah. So like my multifamily project, if I didn't have to count the pool in there, everything was beautiful. It was all aligned, but we've got this fixed EUI target that doesn't work for every kind of project. It worked great for my affordable housing project. That one went all electric without any problem. But as soon as we have this market rate project where the industry demands a pool of all things, because that's what drives the rents, and I don't make those decisions. That's above my pay grade. But, the pool is number one priority. So we were tasked with find a path that works with the pool. So the path is get an exception with the building department to keep things all electric. So I think it's more the code rather than the metrics. And it's the same problem that we're going to have with this Energized Denver ordinances, where we've got this one fixed EUI target. Is that going to work for a big multifamily project with a pool versus without a pool? Those are different numbers. It's just, whenever you have a project with a different process load that another project doesn't have, should the one with the pool be better? I don't know. There's a philosophical question there, I guess, but it was in these two cases where people were trying to do the right thing and the code was trying to steer them in other directions. Oh, it was so frustrating that we had everybody on board until we tried to meet the code, and the code is now working against us. It's a bummer.
It's not foreign to me in that I've done a lot of work in California in the last decade and a half, and Title 24 has been written largely to promote gas combustion and steer you away from electric. And so it has taken probably until the current 2022, which won't be adopted and rolled out for another 6 months, or no, 10 months, that hopefully will correct all these things. But we have jurisdictions that have banned nat gas hookups, and the current 2019 version, it doesn't look favorably on some electric end uses because it was written to favor gas. And so it is not the first time or place that an AHJ's code undermines their climate action goals.
Now, I could share a happy story about this as well. And the happy story is in Fort Collins. So Fort Collins, they've got their integrated design assistance program, which is similar to the Excel program, but it follows also a PCI methodology for calculating their rebates, and they let us demonstrate that for code compliance. Just within the last few months, they've also recognized that this methodology, it's gas-based. It was rewarding the gas projects. They want to try to find a way to encourage efficient electrification. They changed their code instead of, and they're little, so nobody's looking that closely at what Fort Collins is doing. But the IDAP program now, instead of following a strict gas baseline, now it follows a fuel source baseline. So if you go with an electric project, they will abandon the PCI gas baseline, and they'll say, go ahead and use that electric baseline. Let's reward this efficient electrification. Now, there's other code requirements in there to make sure that your heat pumps are good and all those good things. But they just decided they were going to do what they wanted and made it work for what their goals were. And that was really exciting. And then we're able to really promote that efficient electrification. The rebates support it. And through that change in policy, we switched a multifamily project that was just going to go regular old aquatherm to all electric. And it was really exciting. So it was the first time that it happened. And it was sort of, it drove this shift in policy where now it's opened the door to all kinds of things in Fort Collins. So, and that was just, the people recognizing it and changing that policy. And that was really exciting to see both the codes and the utility incentives support that in a way that made it make sense for the project. And this wasn't, a super green building project. This was a project that was just trying to meet the code. They were trying to build efficiently, regular old market rate multifamily, nothing exciting. They switched from gas to electric because of the policy and because of the incentives. So that's the key. So when you can make that better building be the less expensive building, then everybody wins. So these code decisions are so important for Boulder and Denver, and it just drives me crazy when we're trying to write these codes that are fighting what our goals are. Why not make the codes encourage these things? So that's my struggle.
That was my comment to the Colorado Energy Office this week, was that, okay, this House Bill 2022-1362 says everyone adopts the 2021 version of IECC by 2025. And I said, are you keeping C407 as cost-based, or are you putting in some other metric that site source or carbon? Because if it's cost-based, realize, and you got rid of, because at one time, the early drafts of it had these provisions that crushed on-site combustion by requiring the on-site renewables and various things to offset it. Once those were gutted, it's just like, well, are you promoting electrification in this? Like, you really should look. Most of my work is not small mountain town residential buildings or commercial buildings in the mountains. Most of it's down here on the Front Range. And I know from these that from cost-based metrics generally favor natural gas. I haven't looked up there. Are you rolling out something that's actually going to be the antithesis of what you really want? And they didn't have an answer. And they said, you should talk to Howard. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to go talk to Sweet. But I don't know. There is that question. Like, you'll have efficient buildings that are burning efficient natural gas. But I will also say that if people haven't seen Addendum CH to ASHRAE has in it, instead of just the cost-based metrics, you've also got site, source, and carbon. So in the appendice, you would have building performance factors that are not just for one type of metric for cost. They would potentially allow, if they're approved, any jurisdiction then could adopt and then reference that appendice to say, okay, we're instead of going to use the cost-based metrics, we're going to use the site-based metrics. And we can all hash out whether we prefer source over site, but at least it suddenly would open the door to an AHJ adopting these, that they would have multiple metrics that they could then use rather than just cost, which we know is not the greatest for promoting electrification.
Well, that's been the thing. I would say both Boulder and Fort Collins, when we start to point out, hey, your code is working against you here. let's figure this out. Fort Collins just changed their code, and Boulder's trying to allow these exceptions when this comes up. But I mean, that's the indication that this cost-based metric is not the solution. Now, what is the solution? I don't know. That's I'm just a local girl, really. You guys working with all these other national codes and standards and things. What's happening at the national level to discuss that or to deal with that, I guess? I mean, are there talks of, I guess you've shared some of this, Jamy, about how 90.1 might be changing from a cost metric to oh gosh, I can't remember now. Is it a carbon metric or?
Yes, by having, I think that's what ASHRAE is responding to on the 189 and 90.1 committees, is having a carbon metric either in an informative appendix or a normative appendix, so that jurisdictions can adopt it or refer to it if they want an alternative metric in lieu of the standard de facto cost that all of them use. And I think that's a big step. And then we have the whole question of, are we using 20-year global warming potentials, 100-year global warming potentials? Are we including upstream pre-combustion methane leakage? Are we using hourly versus annualized grid emissions factors? And how some of those are useful for design decisions. That's where 189 has kind of gone, is that, we'll use marginal cambium NREL data, long run marginal, using the low cost renewables scenario that you can download yourself right now free on their website. We'll use that as sort of judging an all electric building. But again, if you don't have a backstop that prevents you from putting in nat gas, there is still this like, well, actually my gas emissions factor at 11.7 pounds per therm is lower than the grid marginal emissions factor. So why wouldn't I just put in that? And so in some jurisdictions, particularly like Colorado, because we still have a lot of gas peaking plants, if you're judging it based on this gas peaking plant, then just burning it on site at 95% efficiency looks better. And so there is this conundrum of like, well, what are you thinking? If you're building type is multifamily and its loads are after hours when the grid is dirtier, then the metrics that you use matter because you're not necessarily incentivizing what the outcomes you want. And so that's the message that I've been trying to beat into people, is that don't just assume because of what Linda showed earlier, that we're decarbonizing 80% by 2030 means that everything's clean and that you'll get the outcome you want if you just switch everything to electric.
So Matt just put a really good comment in the chat. So Matt, I'm going to quote you here. And you said California's problems with the gas versus electric baseline issue. And some big cities have gotten around it by just banning gas. That's a proposed amendment for Denver. And, you know, of course, we all freak out about that kind of stuff because we don't have all electric options. You know, I don't think technology is, you know, a lot of projects, yes, they can go electric, but there's certainly some challenges with that. And then you also say, or just use a 30-year energy cost target using projected gas prices. Now, I think that's really interesting. I'm definitely in favor of incentivizing versus mandating, because when we can make that electrified option look better, then we're going to win every time. You know, I laugh at all of these amendments that say, oh, the electrified building is cheaper. I was like, well, if it was cheaper, we'd be doing it every time. It's the, you know, when you can make it the cheaper option, and codes can definitely make that happen. But I think those are two interesting concepts. And I guess I'd like to, I don't know, Linda, if I can steer the conversation to the direction, because that is a big
Steer
question.
away.
If we want to ban natural gas, yeah, and there's two amendments proposed for Denver. There's requiring heat pumps for space heating, and there's requiring heat pumps for water heating. And they're two separate amendments. They get a little fuzzy about, well, what happens when you're using water heating for space heating. But anyway, discuss. Thoughts and feelings about banning natural gas for space heating or water heating?
If it was just service hot water, that might work. But in your case of like that pool heating system, that was not going to work.
Thank you, Aaron, for a dose of common sense.
You could still do electric resistance.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't say it's cost effective, but you can just sever it.
Right.
I mean, I think we probably should be disincentivizing having an outdoor heated pool that runs through the winter. Like that should just like not be something you're allowed to design. Like we'll know the code is working, and especially on the retrofit side, if like all the all glass skyscrapers downtown are like having to retrofit to spandrel panels. Like that's how we know it's working. If we see that.
Yeah, I don't see either one of those in our immediate future. It's I mean, like this Boulder project that I mentioned with the pool. The pool was non-negotiable. Everything else was going to be sacrificed before the pool. I mean, we have to realize what's driving construction. If you make it so stringent that the only option for people is to use electric resistance pool boilers in Denver, they're just going to build in Aurora. And you have to make it accommodate what the industry is requiring. And, you know, if Denver's goal is, all right, no more pools in Denver, then that particular product just won't happen in Denver. It'll happen in Aurora or Westminster or Broomfield or wherever until, you know, everybody else catches up to Denver. But it's not that they won't happen. They'll still happen. They're just going to happen somewhere else. So can we make the code find the happy medium? And that's what I'm not sure.
Yeah, and leakage is a problem, but like, at least for pools, like I think outdoor pools, at least being closed between like November through February, at least makes sense, right? Or like,
yeah,
December
not
through
if you're a
February.
developer, not if you're a developer. That is a forbidden conversation. That will, you know, if you say you have to drain your pool in the winter, oh, well, we're going to talk about the, you know, the water loss or, you know, the energy use. That And you're talking about a rooftop pool that's, way up on the top of the high rise. That is not an insignificant requirement. And that is enough to shut down a project. And I'm not even kidding. This is a big deal. And it sounds so silly, we're the energy people, just, shut down your pool in the winter. People won't. It's an amenity that is a very, very high priority in the programming of the entire project. It is a big, big deal. So, I worry about these amendments that are, well, and I should back up, Matt, they haven't even proposed an amendment that's just like shut down your pool in the winter. That did not even come up in conversation. It's the, make your pool all electric. and that's what is upsetting, because it's a well-intended but not well thought out type of amendment that, now so we're going to have electric resistance pool boilers. So, it's going to cost 5 times as much to heat this pool. We've got insanely insane housing costs in Denver right now. Again, is that going to just completely shut down the project? And it sounds funny that a pool can make or break a project, but that's where people are at right now. That's what the people who are spending money have as their priority, and they'll design the entire project around the pool. So yeah, energy wise, yeah, it's definitely a thing. But if we make it so people either have to go all electric for their pools or shut down their pools in the winter, they're just going to build it somewhere else. And we have not then solved the problem for Denver. This is the Denver and Boulder codes issue. I don't know what the answer is. That might be above my pay grade.
Pool covers have been required for a few decades, and
Yeah.
I don't even know if they're ever actually even barely make it to the drawings, much less actually get installed and used. But
it's such a great point. You are required to purchase a pool cover. You are not required to use it. Everybody knows it. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think that pools alone, like you'll lose maybe some of the high end of the luxury developers that want to do that, but like there's a lot of housing being built, and there's such a demand for it that's not like you'll lose a few luxury developers, and like I'm okay with that, right? If that's the goal of the code.
Well, I think that's a question. Is Denver okay with that? Because it's not just you'll lose a few, you'll lose them all, and we're talking thousands of dwelling units will be built not in Denver. That's a reality. My clients have told me that we'll just build somewhere else. And I think that's our question for Denver as we're going through this is, well, what's the stopping point? Do you want to stop this type of construction in Denver? And it's an honest question. I'm not trying to be snarky. Do they want to have these types of projects not happen in Denver? That's fine, if that's the goal of these amendments, but they'll still happen somewhere else.
I think I'm just gonna come here and say that might be fine. I have a lot of developers.
I don't know.
I have a lot of clients that are developers, and like we work with a lot of like investment funds that handle REITs and some other like investment vehicles, and their investors are looking for zero carbon emissions, specifically now that the SEC is working on that rule to disclose better environmental goals and all of that. So I mean, our clients right now are buying or selling their properties based on what we're telling them their projected emissions are going to be. So maybe they would see an outdoor pool and they would like, well, that's going to cost us, I don't know how many millions of dollars in investment money. I'm just not going to have a pool. I think as Matthew was saying, the demand for housing is there. Like people need places to live. So I think at the end of the day, the market force is still going to be there. Maybe there's going to be a disruption, sure. But I think that maybe at the end of the day, there's a lot of money looking for green investments. So I would love to see. I mean, I would love to see what happens. I'm excited. I don't know. Like For sure, we want housing to be built. Is if we don't have a pool, then are we going to lose housing? I don't know.
So I guess that
interesting.
makes me think about, because we're saying if it's not built in Denver, it would be built in a different community, and then people have more transportation, right? So I guess, Jamy, would you want to talk a little bit about looking at not a building, but something beyond the building?
Sure. So a lot of ways to take that. I have been arguing since back when I worked at NRDC in San Francisco that the after Governor Schwarzenegger kind of threw out this kind of aspirational goal of net zero by 2030 for residential and 2020 for residential, 2030 for commercial. And the CEC and the CPUC were like, is that the mandate? What does that mean? And our arguments at NRDC were, well, if you're just requiring on-site solar and it's only decided at the lot line, well, then you're going to build out in San Ramon, you're going to build out outside beyond where BART currently runs and where you have more solar access than you do in urban infill and in the foggier areas downtown. And that just seems like a whole policy shell game. You're now just shunting building emissions onto the transportation sector. And that's not electrified yet. Certainly, at least in California in 2010 and 2012, it wasn't. So I still argue the same kinds of things here in Denver and the Front Range. Denver has, according to DRCOG, a 73% single occupancy vehicle rate in Denver. And that's atrocious. Some of those cars are just driving through. They're driving from Centennial and going up to Broomfield or someplace. But a lot of them are actually terminating in the city itself. And location does matter. It goes back to a number of things we've been talking about. It's like housing. Where is the housing stock, the quality housing that you can actually afford? Is it school districts? What is it that is causing people to live and commute longer distances? And how do you deal with that holistically rather than just at a building efficiency? And that's one of my pushbacks against NBI's proposal for on-site renewables on buildings is that, well, this will just essentially, this is going back now, I'm pulling threads back together here from our earlier Denver codes proposals of like, well, you're just going to do a zoning policy in a building energy code by essentially saying you're not going to be able to build to your full zoning FAR allowance for a downtown property because you're only going to build a few stories, and then you're going to have to put PV on it rather than build 10 to 20 stories.
And just to clarify that was a certain amount of PV per square foot. They're looking for a certain amount of PV per square foot. So that definitely was an unintended consequence of the code being written in that way.
Or was it? That's what I was kind of asking. Like, do you just want to crush all downtown developments? Okay, fine. Just tell us, be transparent with us that that's what you're doing. The same way that Elizabeth was asking, is this what you want to do? Do you want to just stop market rate or an above market rate housing in Denver? Fine. I don't agree with it, but at least I know to stop ranting, I guess, because that's what you wanted for some reason. And I don't know if they're thinking about these things or not. And the same with Energized Denver. Energized Denver allows you to do energy efficiency or on-site renewables, in which case it's going to be much easier to do those on-site renewables further out from the city center where you don't have shading. And so there is sort of this backwards thing, like, are you actually panelizing the buildings that are part of the urban core and supporting those that are further out and lower rise and less dense? So it's the concern that I have, that we keep looking at things in a very siloed approach. And I would say that's been a part of the work that I've done at NRDC or ME, that I've presented at BPAC conferences and Greenbuild, of layering on transportation, embodied carbon, refrigerants, and the operational energy emissions to look at, here's everything. You want to address all of these, which things actually can affect them the most, and which ones are the biggest that you should start tackling.
Matt, you
Then I
just
don't think we're
added
there.
something else in the chat there. Could you explain your last chat comment, please?
Which one? Oh, the codes?
Yeah, the big trade one.
Yeah, the trade is going to be getting rid of single family zoning to allow for zero emissions. So if someone says they want to do a zero emissions building, you let them build wherever they want. And I think no developer is going to turn that down, because they get to basically pick, some really nice area to and charge a shit ton of money for their buildings.
I'd have to think about that. That's an interesting concept.
I think one point that's sort of lost in this is there's incrementalism in energy code, because energy code was always this trade-off of capacity on the grid. But that's not what we're trying to achieve with code anymore. It's zero emissions. And I think it's fair to look at it as this entirely new thing. And so I think it's fine to say, yes, the code got a lot stricter, because it's not just about those energy and capacity questions of what it used to be about. It's about this entirely different thing now, which is even more important. And I think a lot of people aren't necessarily fully processing what that means, that code is going to have to look a lot different, and it's goals are very different. And substantially, I think is, I don't even know if ASHRAE is the right body to run building codes anymore, frankly.
I'll speak for the 189 side of things, which is perhaps the more progressive of the codes, but or of the standards that ASHRAE puts out. There is extreme interest on the 189 standard in having energy efficiency and low carbon, having this dual metric of just, we want them not to be energy pigs, but then we want them to be near carbon neutral. And then LEED has also adopted a similar approach to version 4.1 EA credit 2, that don't just be completely an energy pig, show that you're at least hitting certain either energy cost targets using the PCI methodology, and then what is your grid? And part of that is because in certain areas of North America, if you're in upstate New York, if you're in Quebec, you're just getting 100% carbon-free energy pretty much just by connecting to the grid, just by removing that gas. And so we can't have 0 over 0 as our equation for giving somebody for their carbon reductions. So we still want a backstop of energy efficiency of something, and then also then score them on their carbon. And some buildings can certainly move around. If you're building a data center for Amazon, maybe you can pick and choose where part of the country. But if you're doing a K through 12 school in that jurisdiction, you can't choose your grid. So we don't want to penalize certain projects.
Well, that 90 minutes flew by. We're up to 8 o'clock, and I guess with our last minute, I know, Linda, you have one of your bullet points as how the people attending this call or anybody that's interested could get involved with Denver codes.
Yeah, just to go back to that, if you search up Denver IECC code process, it will take you there. And Denver definitely could benefit by having more voices in the mix. So I'd certainly encourage people to do that. And I appreciate our conversation. That was a lot of fun. Love to just get to that future outcome where we'd have carbon neutral grid and a carbon neutral buildings with efficiency. And this is an interesting time in making that happen. So as we make the big transition together. Thanks.
Yeah, crazy times for sure. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.